The rain was falling in heavy sheets the night Armin returned to the town he once promised himself he would never see again. The empty roads glistened like broken glass, and the wind carried a strange weight like it remembered everything he tried to forget. As he stepped out of the bus, a single memory struck him so violently that he had to stop and breathe. It was her laugh. The way it softened even the hardest pieces of him. It had been 12 years, but the echo of Layla's laugh still wrapped itself around his heart like a forgotten song. And in that moment, he realized something terrifying. Some memories never fade, and some loves never end. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and love that survives time, please like, comment, share, and subscribe before the story continues. It truly helps the channel reach more hearts like yours. Armin moved slowly through the familiar streets that had once shaped his entire world. The shops had changed, the faces were different, but the air felt the same, quiet, slow, and soaked with nostalgia. He had left this town when he was barely 19. Chasing dreams that he thought were bigger than the girl he left behind. At that age, everything felt urgent. Everything felt replaceable. He believed life would give him more than what a small town and a childhood love could offer. But life had its own strange way of teaching lessons and its own cruel timing. Back then, Layla was the girl who believed in him, long before he believed in himself. She was soft-spoken but stubborn, shy but courageous where it mattered most. They grew up together, first as neighbors, then as friends, and eventually as two young hearts who didn't know that they were writing the chapters that life would make them return to over and over again. Their first kiss happened under the old mango tree behind Armin's house, on a late summer evening when the sky looked like it was on fire. It wasn't planned. It wasn't perfect, but it felt like the world paused, just long enough to bless their innocence. He remembered how her hands shook, and how she laughed nervously after, saying she didn't know if she did it right. He remembered how he told her it was perfect even though he was trembling just as hard. Years passed and everything changed. Armin got a scholarship in the city, his world widened, and for the first time he saw possibilities far beyond the town. Layla encouraged him, even though he didn't notice how her own heart broke in silence. He thought distance was just space, not something that could loosen the threads of love. But slowly messages turned shorter, calls became less frequent, and life in the city swallowed him whole. By the time he realized how empty success felt without her, she had already stopped waiting at the old mango tree. When he heard she was getting engaged, he wanted to return. He wanted to fight for her, to say he was sorry, to tell her that even. Though he had kissed other lips after her, none felt like home. But ego is a thief of love. Pride becomes poison when it mixes with regret. He stayed silent, convincing himself that she deserved happiness even if it wasn't with him. And now, 12 years later, he was back, not because he chose to return, but because life gave him no other choice. His father had passed, and the funeral brought him home. The town looked smaller now, quieter, almost fragile, in a way he never noticed before. In the midst of arrangements, condolences, and restless memories, he heard a familiar name whispered in the crowd. Layla. She was back in town too, widowed. The word hit him harder than he expected. He didn't know the man she had married, but hearing that she had loved someone else, built a life with someone else, and lost someone else, it stirred something deep and painful inside him. Not jealousy. Not regret, something more tender, something almost protective. That evening, he walked toward the old mango tree without knowing why. Maybe memory guided him, maybe guilt, maybe the last fragile hope that some things survive time no matter how much life tries to erase them. The sky was dimming, the wind cold, and the tree looked older, its branch bent, its leaves sparse, as if it too had lived a difficult life. Armin touched the trunk and felt a strange shiver. This tree knew them better than anyone ever would. It had seen their childhood, their love, their promises they broke, both in their own ways. As he stood there drowning in memories, he heard footsteps, soft, slow, familiar. He turned. And there she was, Layla, not the girl he left behind, but a woman who had lived, loved, lost, and still carried grace in her eyes. Her hair was tied back, streaked with exhaustion, and a quiet sadness that only those who had been broken learned to hide. But when her eyes met his, a flicker of the past ignited a spark so old, so deep, that it made the air tremble. They didn't speak. Words would have been too small. The first thing Armin noticed was how time had changed her, and yet somehow, she remained the most familiar part of a world that had stopped feeling like home. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was heavy, meaningful, like two stories meeting again after too long. He finally found his voice, but it sounded rough, almost foreign. He told her he was sorry for leaving, for not returning sooner, for not understanding love when it was pure. She listened silently, her face unreadable. When he finished, she said something simple, something gentle. She told him she had forgiven him years ago. Not because she forgot him, but because she never stopped wishing him well. That single sentence fractured him in ways he did not expect. Kindness has a way of cutting deeper than anger. They sat beneath the mango tree, just like they used to, and talked for hours. She told him about her husband, how kind he was, how gentle, how their marriage wasn't perfect, but it was peaceful. She told him about the accident that took him away. Armin listened, feeling a strange mixture of sorrow for her and gratitude for the man who had loved her in ways he once failed to. Over the next few weeks, they saw each other often, sometimes intentionally, sometimes by chance. Walks by the rear, visits to town markets, quiet moments outside her mother's shop. Their connection was no longer the naive rush of youth. It was quieter now, more mature, more tender. There was something healing in the slowness of it, something comforting in knowing that love can survive even after being reshaped by time. Still, Armin feared something. He feared that getting close again would bring pain to her life. She had endured enough. She didn't need another heartache, another goodbye. And he didn't trust himself. What if he left again? What if dreams pulled him away once more? But life sometimes guides the heart in ways reason cannot. One evening, while helping fix a broken window at her mother's shop, the electricity went out. The shop was dim, lit only by a lantern. Layla came to stand beside him, brushing dust from her hands, and for the first time in years he saw her. Smile, not a polite smile, not a weary one, but the soft, youthful smile he thought he had lost forever. Something inside him shifted. The moment felt like a quiet miracle. He suddenly realized that love wasn't always loud, dramatic, or urgent. Sometimes love was slow hands brushing against each other while fixing a window. Sometimes it was shared grief, shared laughter, or silent understanding. Sometimes love was returning to the place you ran from, only to find the one thing you always needed waiting patiently in the ruins of your mistakes. He realized he had never stopped loving her, and perhaps, in some small, quiet way, she had never stopped loving him either. Weeks turned into months, and the town started whispering, their names together again, their connection growing again. But this time, Armin didn't run away. He didn't fear the heaviness of love. He didn't fear the future. He only feared losing the chance life was unexpectedly returning to him. One late afternoon, they found themselves walking toward the old mango tree. Again, this time without nostalgia pulling them, but something stronger, something like fate. The sky was fading, golden light seeping through the branches, and the air smelled like rain. Layla stood in front of him, her face calm, her eyes soft, and he suddenly realized something profound. She wasn't his first love because she was the first girl he kissed. She was his first love because loving her taught him who he wanted to be. And now, she might become his last love, not because life limited him, but because no heart could endure this kind of connection twice. With a quiet, trembling voice, Layla told him that she wasn't afraid of loving again, not if it was him. Not if it was this version of him, softened by pain, humbled by loss, strengthened by regret, and finally awake to what truly mattered. He didn't kiss her that evening. They didn't rush. They simply stood beneath the tree that had watched their beginning, their ending, and now perhaps their new beginning. Sometimes the most powerful love stories aren't the ones filled with dramatic gestures. Sometimes the greatest romances are the ones that survive time, distance, heartbreak, and return when both hearts are finally ready. And for the first time, Armin felt certain life had brought him back for a reason, not to rewrite the past, but to build a future that had waited 12 long years. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps this channel grow and bring more emotional stories to people who need them. Before you go, tell me in the comments, do you believe lost love can return stronger than before?